Okay, welcome back everybody. Today is Wednesday, and today we're going to be covering the second half of Chapter 3. Um, Last class we left off with dealing with observations and ethnographic research. Before I move on with getting into surveys, is everyone okay with everything so far? Good. All right, so continuing on with Chapter 3, using marketing research to ensure entrepreneurial success. Next thing we're going to talk about is surveys. I think everyone's familiar with what a survey is. Sure, probably some of y'all have done it in some of your other classes. Used one of these, or filled out a survey up for someone else at some point in your time. But surveys are a research technique used to generate data by asking people questions and recording the responses on a questionnaire. It says this is the most common research method, using the voice of the consumer to obtain primary data, and can be conducted through personal interview, mail, telephone, or online. So that's nice, that we don't have to actually do them in person. That we have these different means of being able to get them finished, or get them filled out with them being online or telephone. Just using these different channels that we have available to us. A lot of early um, researchers tend to stick with surveys because that's what they're comfortable with. They're not really as comfortable getting with databases and trying to use other ways of with focus groups and interviews and stuff like that to collect their primary data. So a lot of people actually use surveys when they're just getting started and getting some experience. So just a little FYI there that usually less experienced researchers tend to lean more heavily on surveys. There are some drawbacks to using the surveys. Obviously, there's usually a drawback that comes to anything. Usually, we know that. Male, usually biased. Respondents have either especially positive or negative interactions with the product, service, or brand. I just think a lot of times when people receive something like that in the mail, they don't really take it seriously, and they're just kind of a lot of people purposely distort whatever the results would be, or just don't even pay attention to it and just fill it out like oh yes or no. So a lot of times it's biased in the mail. The telephone, it's increasingly difficult a lot of times when dealing with the telephone. Think about what you do when a telemarketer calls you. What most people do?
Gotta mess with the ring.
Click. Yep. Was it my experience or class last year? Where I was telling you about me working as a telemarketer for like 3 days, 2 days, something like that. Maybe a week. I forgot what it was. But yeah, it's not a very fun job. I mean, I think I even told y'all about the mute button they let us have because it allows you to mute the button and tell them what you think about the customer without them hearing about it. So telephone obviously is going to be really difficult because more and more people know that there's a lot of telemarketers and just think that it's a waste of their time and someone just trying to get some money out of you or something. So it's going to be hard to use the telephone to try to get these surveys done. Online, that's restrictive. Not everyone has the technology. I think it's becoming more and more available as the technology continues to increase in its capacity and its capabilities, and more and more people are getting involved in it. So therefore, the price is coming down. And as technologies increase, then older technologies obviously become obsolete. So more people have access to dial up. Hopefully, no one's on dial up anymore. But I mean, I'm sure the people that didn't used to have the high speed is at least on dial up, if it's even out there anymore. I don't even know if dial up's even out there anymore.
Not sure.
So online, like I said, it's restrictive. Not everyone has the technology, but like I said, it is becoming more available to people. So this little figure 3-2 here, this pretty much gives like a basis of a comparison between the different types of surveys we just talked, different types of methods of getting your surveys out there to the public we talked about. So you can see here on the top line here, the highlighted line, it starts at the left with the basis of comparison, and then it follows to the right with the actual different types of ways that you can actually get these surveys out. So the cost of completed survey, we'll just kind of move left to right. We'll kind of just take our time and move through this chart for a little bit. For mail surveys, obviously it's not going to be that expensive. We're going to have to pay for postage, stuff like that. Um, Envelopes, so not real expensive paper. Print them off. Telephone surveys can be moderately expensive depending on what type of phone packages you have or phone plans you have with cable companies, whether you use landlines or cell phones. Um, that sort of stuff there. Personal interviews obviously is going to be the most expensive. It's where you're going to have to actually take time out of your day and either commute somewhere, have them commute to you, or meet somewhere in the middle or something. And it's going to be probably the most expensive. Online surveys are very inexpensive. Obviously, you can just create the survey and then just send it out in a mass email, or just however you choose to send it out, or just create a little website and then send a link out to people to be able to access the website. So there's a little bit of dealing with the cost of these different types of surveys, with the personal being the most expensive, and the mail and online ones being the least expensive. Ability to probe and ask complex questions. Mail surveys, little to none. Obviously, we're not going to be able to probe people and ask them questions if we're not even in the same location as them, and we're only directly communicating with them via mail. So obviously, we're not going to be able to probe and ask complex questions in that type of a scenario. Telephone surveys, the interviewer can probe and elaborate a little bit when talking on the phone, but not as good as in face-to-face, obviously. So personal interview with the ability to probe and ask complex questions is obviously going to be much higher probability to be able to do that, because the interviewer is going to be face-to-face with the potential consumer or customer. And the online survey, it really just depends. You can go back and ask a respondent to clarify certain responses on the actual survey, so it just depends on how you're conducting them in that manner. The opportunity for interviewers to have bias, to make biased results. There's no opportunity for that on mail surveys, obviously, because you're not aware of what that person looks like, or what race they are, or age, or gender, or anything of that sort. So can't the interviewer really can't have bias the results in that scenario. Telephone surveys, a little bit, because the voice and gender, so you can kind of get a gist of someone through just hearing their voice, through their verbal communication with you. You can kind of get a little bit of a gist of what the person's like, so you can have a little bit of an opportunity there. Personal interview, obviously there's a significant opportunity for the interviewer to be biased there, because obviously they're getting to hear their voice, see their appearance, and their gender, whatever gender they are. And online surveys little if done correctly. So obviously, online surveys, once again, it's kind of the same as the mail survey. There, it's just you're using a different form, electronic form of getting the survey to them, as opposed to the snail mail, as we know, is the old type of mail with the postal service and UPS and stuff of that sort. Anonymity, I can't talk today. Anonymity given to respondents. So obviously, not knowing who the respondent is what we're talking about here. With mail surveys, it's complete unless a coded instrument is used. So we're not going to know who they are unless we actually set up some type of a code in order to determine who that individual is. With telephone surveys, it can be a little, because of telephone contact. So you might be able to determine who that person is via telephone, and you might not be able to. Personal interview, you really don't have much of being able to hide who you are there, because obviously you're sitting face to face. So unless you just come in a costume with a voice changer, I think they're pretty much going to know who you are. And then online surveys, you have some chance email username may be known, so you might be able to decipher who they are through whatever their domain name is, or their email, whatever it is they're using. The response rates for the different types of surveys. For mail surveys, it's going to be port affairs, so usually people are just going to see it, toss it in the trash. And if they do respond, like we said, it's probably going to be a biased response anyways, extremely positive or extremely negative. Telephone surveys, fair refusal rates are increasing, so obviously you have a chance of getting getting a response there. But a lot of times they're just going to hang up on you thinking you're like a telemarketer or someone just trying to say a crock of crap, pretty much, you know. Personal interview, good response rate. Obviously, if they're actually gonna come and interview with you, then obviously they're gonna respond to your questions. But let's hope so. Let's hope someone won't just come up and sit in you throughout the whole interview. Um, and online surveys has a very good response rate, and that's if it's done correctly. So obviously, you just want to make sure that it's neatly and it's not difficult for the respondent to access or not too long of a survey and stuff like that. So you just want to make sure that the framework or parameters of the actual survey when dealing with the online type is in a good, set up correctly so that you can try to get response rates. Um, and I think we can see why the internet, the online, would be a good response rate because usually a lot of people tend to spend a lot of time online nowadays, and it's becoming more increasingly. People are spending their time a lot more there, so we can see why that would have a pretty good response rate. Speed of the data collection. Obviously, mail surveys can be poor. It takes a couple of days to get there. And then if they open their mailbox whenever they get it, can sit in their mailbox for a few days. Obviously, sit on their counter for a few days, and a few days come back if they can fill it out. So poor with mail surveys on the turnaround time with getting your data back. Telephone surveys is good if they actually don't hang up on you and they talk to you. Obviously, the response of the data can be almost instantaneously. It's just the duration of the phone call. The personal interview is good as well because you're getting instant feedback in the real time. And online surveys, the speed of the data obviously is very good. It's just the speed is however long it takes to travel through that fiber optic cable from one modem or one server to the other. So good there for the speed of the data collection. So once again, this figure pretty much just was a little breakdown on the different forms of getting your surveys out there and just comparing them, amongst their cost and the response rates data being collected and all that sort. So that survey makes sense. It's pretty straightforward. I just wanted to spend a little time going through the differences there. So some takeaways: more marketers are using the mall intercept approach. So what do we think a mall intercept approach would be for trying to get our surveys out or trying to get our idea out to the consumer or customer? What do you think that kind of approach would be?
Would that just be like standing in a mall and saying, hey, do you want to answer a few questions?
Yep. So just intercepting people walking through the mall and just trying to ask them questions. The advantages of doing that is it's a reduced cost of personal visits. Obviously, you're only just going to go to a mall or shopping center or anywhere where there's a decent crowd of people that's going to be there. Instead of having to just drive all over town or to different towns or different state, wherever your target market is geographically. Um, Provides flexibility. You can show prototypes, so you can have your prototype with you if you have it created already, and be able to really just show them. Obviously, you can't mail a prototype through the mail. I mean, you could, but obviously it takes a chance of being damaged, or it's going to be more expensive to ship your prototype. And obviously, you're probably not going to build enough prototypes to mail out to all the respondents. So if you're just intercepting people in a mall, then you can use that same prototype and have a good reach while you're in that mall and dealing with different people. So provides a good flexibility there. But however, there are some disadvantages to having the mall intercept approach to trying to target your market. People selected may not be representative of the target market, which could cause a biased response rate. So obviously they might not be representative of that target market. So what do we mean by not being representative of the target market?
Well, if your target market is people aged like 20 to 40, and you're stopping people in the mall and they're like 65, they're not going to give you valuable feedback.
Right, because they're not even within that target market, so it's kind of irrelevant. So it could bias the results. So if they say, "Oh yeah, I'd love to have that," or "Oh no, I wouldn't like to have it," then really someone's thoughts at 65 is going to be a lot different than someone between 20 and 40 on what their likes are and interests are and stuff like that. So that's exactly right. It's just it could bias your results because they're not going to buy your product anyways, and they're just giving you an opinion. So it's really almost kind of a waste of the time. Not saying they wouldn't buy your product, but what I'm saying, it could bias the results. So you just really want to I guess in that sense, while you are doing the mall intercept, try to, if your target range is between 20 and 40, then you don't want to go around asking people their age, but you can kind of filter out who is roughly in that age range. I mean, some people are unfortunate and look older than what they are. Some people look younger than what they are and are blessed, But um, pretty much that's the long and short with the mall intercept. Just intercept people at the malls, and obviously they have their advantages and disadvantages. Everyone good on mall intercept? What that is? Okay, a survey panel. So this is just a panel that's going to consist of some consumers, some stores, or experts. So obviously, you just want to have a little panel of people and different types of people. That like could be a customer, like they said, an expert, or someone. Just people within your industry at different levels, whether it be on the purchasing end or the producing end or selling end of it, whatever it might be. Just have different viewpoints here. Um, this type of a survey is actually gaining popularity. It allows you to survey the same people over and over. So if you have these group of people, you can kind of set up maybe like four different interviews throughout a year, one quarterly. So have one like around the first quarter of the year, the second quarter of the year, or so on and so forth. And it gives the entrepreneur a good source of data. So we're not just getting data from just like a potential customer. We're getting it from people that are selling the products, people that are working there, people that are shopping there, maybe someone who doesn't shop there that shops somewhere else, but all relevant to the same industry or the same targeted market. So just a good new way that they're actually going through with these surveys is actually doing a survey panel, which makes sense because it's a more broad approach. And if you get a group of people like that to agree, then obviously that'll be a lot better because you can test them over time as well. Because why would it be important to be able to survey them and have samples over time as opposed to just a point in time?
Just to see if the market's shifting and people are losing interest or gaining more interest.
Right, just to see exactly to stay in touch with the market, to kind of just see how the trends are moving and see how the economy still is, and see how many sales are being still produced within that industry, stuff of that sort. So timing is important when dealing with surveys as well. So survey panel, everyone's good on the survey panel. Some important issues when using surveys, and obviously you must talk to the right potential customer. Kind of the same thing we were just talking about with Mall Intercept. You want to try your best to keep your target customer within that target market. So obviously, picking the right potential customer is key because you don't want to skew your results or have biased results. You have to ask the right kind of questions. So asking the right questions is key. Obviously, you don't want to waste your time and ask irrelevant questions during the process. The respondent must understand the questions, so you need to make sure that your words are correctly cited and clearly stated, so that they're not being like misled or on whatever your question is truly asking. Make sure it's not a vague question. To make sure that like people will know exactly what you're talking about, and it's not open ended, where like two different people could infer it differently. So just make sure that it's worded correctly to where the respondent can understand it. The respondent must know the answers to the questions. So obviously, and by understanding the questions, they should be able to infer what their correct answer is to the question. So that kind of goes hand in hand. They must answer the questions, obviously, if they're asked, if they do understand them and know the answer. Um, and they must answer the questions truthfully. Once again, how we talk about mail surveys, a lot of people are biased on it, or a lot of times when even surveys when you're evaluating teachers and stuff. I know a lot of students I've done it before just went through all good, or bad, because you're just like whatever. You're over the teacher, you're over the class, you don't really care, and you're just moving on. Same thing. So, respondent must answer truthfully, and the entrepreneur must understand the answers provided. So pretty much just good communication here between the two people, between the respondent and the entrepreneur. So just make sure you're clear and precise, and just get to the point, and just make sure that you are of understanding with one another. Proper phrasing of a question is vital. Like I said before, you don't want it to be too vague or open-ended. Marketing research questions must be worded precisely to gain the accurate information from each respondent. Um, so, do you dine out regularly? Obviously, regularly there is the kind of the word there that people could draw different conclusions upon. Regularly can obviously mean different things to different people. Regularly could mean once a week to some people, once a month to some people, a few times a week, a few times a year. So regularly just depends. So try to avoid using words like that. Um, be precise. So instead of do you dine out regularly, do you dine out once a week? Do you dine out twice a week? Try to be precise so that they know, so that they're not thinking, oh well, they're thinking what regularly is different than this other person. So just try to use precise words to gain accurate information here. Good on the proper phrasing of questions here. So for formatting surveys, we have open-ended questions. So these are the four types of your most popular types of surveys with the formats. The open-ended questions kind of just leaves it open-ended for the respondent to where they can kind of use their imagination a little bit and kind of really think on what it is, and more of a personal approach, I guess, leaving it open-ended. We're trying to really get some ideas and thoughts out of that. I think the open-ended questions, my opinion, they'd be good for when you're trying to develop ideas for a product or how to improve your product. Trying to leave them open-ended to kind of leave their ideas flowing into you, because if you make it too precisely of a question, they're not going to be able to elaborate or think outside the box. So I think open-ended questions is a good format to use for surveys when trying to expand on your ideas that you're trying to create. Close-ended or fixed alternative questions. Obviously, this is going to be questions where we're trying to narrow down a specific response or try to determine what a specific item is that we're trying to figure out if people are going to be interested in. And kind of different than the open-ended questions, I think that the closed-ended or the fixed alternative questions is better for scenarios if you already know what your product's going to be, and you're kind of trying to figure out maybe one or two little intimate details of your product that you maybe don't have figured out yet, but you know that those are the only details that you want to focus on within the question. So I think the closed-ended format of a survey would be better for that purpose. And the semantic differential scale. These we'll explain both what the Likert and the semantic differential scale is. Pretty much the semantic differential scale is going to be a survey to where on the left and right hand sides they're going to be the complete opposite meanings. Like one will be like I'm never late for work on one end, and on the other end it's going to be I'm always late for work, and it's going to have the strongly agree, somewhat agree, or indifferent in the middle. That's the type of the semantic differential scales with the types of the format of the survey. The Likert scales are going to be the ones where it's just a statement given. I am always late for work, or I'm never late for work. It's going to be one of the two statements, and then you'll just have a scale from 1 to 5, with 1 being the least likely or the most negative response, and 5 being the most positive response. So that's what the Likert scale is. So those are the different types of formats of the surveys. Just so we can get a visual on the semantic differential scale and the Likert scale formats of surveys, we've got a little example. We'll start with the semantic differential one. So like I said before, we can see here there's differences that relate to the same topic or scenario. Each of these line items do, but like I said, the left and the right hand sides are going to differ on same topic, just on complete opposite ends of it. So we can see here on the first statement that describes you, on the left, you are almost never late for your appointments, and then on the right we can see you are always late for your appointments. So obviously we can see here on each side, we start on each side with strongly agree, then we move into agree, then slightly agree, and then neutral. So that's just an example of what the semantic differential scale is. And obviously each line is going to be of the same topic or subject, just on different ends of the spectrum, pretty much. So everyone got what the semantic differential scale is here. Okay, next, here's the Likert scale. So we can see at the top here, we've got numbers 1 through 5 of the ratings available to the respondents. On the left-hand side, we have strongly agree. The second one's disagree, or strongly disagree, I'm sorry. Second one's disagree. Third is undecided. 4 is agree. And obviously 5 is strongly agree. And then, like I said, those scales are just going to be moved on down into your chart, with on the left-hand side with your statement that you're trying to survey. And as we can see here, the first item says the cashier was courteous. And then obviously you can either strongly agree or strongly disagree or anywhere in between based upon the Likert scale. So different formats of survey, open-ended, closed-ended, um, the semantic differential scale and the Likert scale. Is everyone clear on the different types of surveys and situations that would be best for using the different types of surveys? I think the Likert scale and the semantic really could be almost interchangeable. It's really just a preference on what you like. Some might be better for different scenarios, really, and I think that would be more so something that the individual would discover as they would go about creating their surveys if they think um, one would be more advantageous than the other one. So there's a little bit of the different types of the formats of the surveys there. So things to remember when using the surveys: asking questions is always obtrusive, and some customers will not participate. So what do we mean by obtrusive there, and that people aren't going to participate?
They just might not be comfortable giving their opinion on certain things.
Right.
Keep quiet.
Right. So they might just be embarrassed, or might just, like you said, might be too personal of a topic that they're willing to discuss. So just that's always good to keep in mind. I think people realize that if anyone's really went out and tried to ask people questions, it can tend to make people upset pretty quick a lot of times. Some people don't care, but some people do, and it's just, I guess it's just really just a personal thing there. So it's just good for the entrepreneur to keep that in mind. That just brace yourself for rejection when you go out there and try to actually do these surveys. Another thing, the respondent may not be truthful. Obviously, we know that they could be sending you the wrong way, giving you wrong directions, whatever it might be. Some people just get off on that type of thing and just think it's cool to just be untruthful with people and waste their time. So that's a good thing to remember too. Um, Demographic questions should be asked at the end of the survey. Demographic questions relate to age, income, race, etc., stuff of that sort. And use categories consistent with the U.S. Bureau of Census. So try to stick with categories that are within that already there. Don't try to recreate the wheel per se. Um, why do you think we should keep the demographic questions near the end of the survey?
Near the end of the survey?
A lot of times people might get offended at the beginning, and you might not be able to get the questions. That could be a reason. Um, and also, you don't want to kind of for your own well-being. How we talked a little bit about the entrepreneur being biased on the results. So obviously, we could probably infer what their race is, and get a general idea of their age and all that stuff. But it's just best to keep those demographic questions for the end, both so that you're not biased in that way. They're not biased or thinking you're going to coming off as biased or asking them biased questions because of these demographic questions. So just good practices to keep them near the end of the survey. Okay, a little update on the project. So let's just take a few minutes here and just develop some survey questions with our groups. Obviously, we don't have groups here. Um, so what we'll do instead of taking time on this, so people at home listening to this, obviously it's not a group thing. If you want to pause now and take some time now to develop your survey questions with amongst yourself, then that's fine. But we're going to keep moving through the content right now today. If for in-class people that are coming to class on Friday, we're going to take some time to work on this project update right here. So right now I'm just trying to get through this content with chapter 3 because the next couple of days I want to spend working really getting this project moving. So for now, just know that that's the project update, and we will revisit this here in the next couple of days, starting on Friday. Okay, so experiments is going to be our next topic here. Cause and effect is what we're going to be looking for when dealing with experiments. It involves the manipulation of an independent cause and the measurement of its effect on the dependent variable. So obviously we're looking for cause and effect. What causes something and what effect does that have on anything down the road? It can be conducted in the field, the real world, or in a laboratory. So obviously the real world is going to be elements. You can't really control all the elements. A laboratory, you can totally control the environment and whatever elements you enter into the testing subject. The independent variables are usually one or more of the marketing mix variables. What are the marketing mix variables again? 4 Ps.
Product, price, place, promotion.
Promotion, right? So those are usually the independent variables that we're talking about here when dealing with these experiments. When you enter in these different variables. Um, so obviously in the field or in the real world, field experiments can be expensive, but are a great way to gauge people's reaction to changes in the marketing mix. So obviously, field experiments are expensive, but that's where you're going to actually see this real data being collected and this good primary data by seeing how people interact with situations when dealing with the marketing mix. Um, the most common form of a field experiment in marketing is the test market. When testing a product, it is difficult to control all conditions in the field, so some will opt for laboratory testing. Um, the test market, that's dealing with obviously the main market, just wanting to test the actual market that you're going to do it. So if you're going to actually take time to go into the field, you want to make sure that you do the actual test market. Um, and obviously, like I said, it comes down to choice of whether you want to do it in the field or in the laboratory. A lot of people choose a laboratory, like I said, because you can totally control the environment and control what factors actually enter into determination. Conjoint studies, they uncover the relative importance each customer attaches to different levels of each brand or potential product or feature. So pretty much what that means is there's a good example in the book. It speaks of, and this is dealing with the different levels of each brand, potential the importance of it, the levels of each brand. So what that means is um, they did a survey. The book said they did a survey, and they asked some professional contractors and just some everyday, plain old everyday people about a power tool. And that particular power tool, like they had a commercial series one or commercial level one. They were trying to determine what type of a drill to put out. Well, so they asked different types of people, and the people that used it all the time for their jobs and to make money, and that's what they were using it as one of their tools for their company or something. Um, they said that they'd be willing to pay a lot more money for a more powerful tool, just a better product, pretty much. Well, the people who were just your household people, your ordinary people who didn't really do that, they just did odd jobs here and there, or just did stuff, little projects around the house, little fixer-uppers. They said they would rather have a less powerful tool with at least less battery power life and pay less for it, because obviously they're not using it as much. They're not depending upon it to make money and stuff for their well-being. So that's what they're getting at there with the conjoint studies. So they're trying to determine what price level or what level of importance on each brand. So obviously that was the same brand drill, but they're different levels of that brand. So they're trying to get what people perceive and out of that value of that brand, and why people would be willing to pay more for more or less for less of the product. So does that make sense? Dealing with the conjoint studies. So pretty much what that company did was they ended up creating 2 lines of the drill. Obviously, one for more of a household and one for more of the commercial contractors, people actually using the drill for work. So if they wouldn't have done that conjoint study, they probably would have just made something that was somewhere in between, and it might have just sat on the shelf because it was too expensive for the household people and a little more powerful than what they really needed, but really just not up to par for what the people at the construction company needed. So they could have just really failed in that venture, but instead they created 2 things that ended up being a success. So that's the idea of what we're talking about there with the first bullet. Um, it allows the entrepreneur to construct the correct brand product with the appropriate features. So just what I just described there. So they were able to construct the correct brand and product with the appropriate features for each of the targeted markets they were targeting. If different customers want different things, these customers should be grouped into different market segments. So obviously, we grouped the contractors in one group. We grouped the home people, do-it-yourself to ordinary Joes in one group, and that's how we decipher between who got what product. And then you can design a product to fulfill the need of each segment. So obviously, with that drill design example, we can see this whole slide of how you can actually go about developing the different products and put them into different people into different segments of the target market, and create a product that's suitable or tailored for each of those segments of that targeted market. So conjoint studies, everyone good on that? What they are, how they work. Next, another little project update. Brainstorm and discuss how you can use a conjoint study in your venture. Once again, as I said on the last project update, if you're at home and you want to stop now that we just covered conjoint studies, that's fine. Feel free to do so. But for now, like I said, we're going to be using Friday and a couple days next week in class to be getting ahead on this project and really get the ball moving. So we'll be working on this project update in class on Friday and continuing in the next week. So just for people working at home, do it whenever you feel like doing it. Just make sure that it gets done. Research design. So obviously there's no optimal research design that's out there. It's not some framework that's like, oh, you have to use this as the best research design. Obviously, there's more than one way to tackle a problem. I think we can see this. I know that when doing algebra problems and stuff, statistics problems, calculus problems, you can start, at the beginning and get to the end using different methods. But the only catch is when dealing with math, that doesn't work for all types of scenarios if you don't follow this strict order of operations, although you can still reach the same conclusion based upon the situation. But dealing here with actual research designs, there's obviously the same thing with math. There's different ways you can get to with same problem get to the same answer with different routes in getting there. Inexperienced researchers typically use the survey approach. So, like I said, their research design is going to be focused more on the surveys. So, what type of surveys they're going to use, or what form of survey, how they're going to get that survey out. So, that's going to be more of their design on their research. So to get the best research or test the viability of a product, use a combination of research methods. Obviously, if you spread yourself out across, whether it be investing in a portfolio, if you spread yourself out with different investments, it's going to be better than what it would if you just put all your money into one investment. So same thing here with research methods. There's not really one that's best. So depending on what target market you're going after, or whatever your product or service or process is, you should probably use a combination of research methods. Exhaust your secondary data. Obviously, because we know the secondary data is already out there, it's cheaper to access, so you want to exhaust that secondary data. Engage in ethnographic research. Remember, we said what ethnographic research is, the mystery shoppers, and dealing with going into different competitors' environments and stuff of that sort. Follow up with in-depth interviews. We discussed what in-depth interviews were, with having one-on-ones with the potential customer or client or consumer, and really digging into and probing the customer of what their thoughts are on a product or a service. So you want to have follow-ups with that. Deploy conjoint studies to properly configure your product. We just talked about what conjoint studies were, how to put groupings of people into different target markets or different segments of the markets, and be able to develop a product that's suitable for each group, and then engage in some field testing. Obviously, field testing or laboratory testing, but I think it's always important to be able to still try to actually get out in the field, because it's better to actually get into some environments to where you actually can't control everything, because as an entrepreneur, you're not going to be able to control all those external environmental forces that are coming at you. Next is sampling. You cannot research every customer, obviously. Time just does not allow us to be able to do so. A sample is a portion of the total population that is representative of the customer population as a whole. So obviously, if we're going to just take samples, obviously then we're just going to take a sample of something. So if we actually sample a product, then we know we just take a little small piece of it. Like I'm sure someone's been to an ice cream store to where they got the little bitty plastic spoons or wooden spoons. If you want to sample something, you can get a little taste of it. So here's an example. Just take a little sample. Um, so questions to ask yourself when dealing with sampling is who is to be sampled. So how are we gonna go about collecting who we actually pull out to sample? What's going to be a part of that sample? And how big should the sample be? So who are we going to sample and how big should it be are the two questions that we need to ask ourselves when determining what we're going to do with sampling. There's two ways we can go about determining who we're gonna actually sample and how large of an actual population we're going to sample. The first part is probability sampling. This has a precise rules on selecting the sample. Each person within the population has an equal chance of being sampled. So we might just say randomly, if there's 1,000 people, we're going to pull 100 people out of it. We're just going to randomly pull 100 people, no matter what. It doesn't matter how old they are, what they look like, how tall they are, what kind of food they like. It doesn't matter. We're just going to randomly pick 100 people. So everyone has a 10% chance of being picked, right? A good example: putting names in a hat and randomly selecting. So everyone has the same probability of being selected. The non-probability sampling, the use of arbitrary judgment to select the sample so that the chance of selecting a particular portion of the population is either unknown or zero. Also known as convenience sampling, so picking the people that live closest to you. So instead of actually going out wherever if your target market is here, Tazewell, Bluefield, Tazewell, and Princeton, means if we live in Bluefield, we're only going to sample people in Bluefield. We're not going to go to Tazewell or Princeton. So obviously, with that being said, that example that I just used between the three different little towns here, which type of sampling method do we think would be superior to the other?
Probably random sampling.
Right, the probability sampling is going to be better because we're not going to actually pick something based upon it being easier because they're closer. Or, oh, well, I'm going to, you tend to be biased, like, well, I'm going to pick this person, I'm going to pick this person. So if you're randomly doing it, then you're going to have a better chance of actually getting different types of people and different types of ideas. So the probability sampling is going to be the one that is going to be most often used and the one that you should focus more of your time on. Non-probability sampling is going to probably skew your results and give you more of a biased approach. It's not going to be a true representative of the actual plot of people or the actual plot that you're trying to actually get a sample out of. Proper data collection and analysis. Everyone was good on sampling. What it was different between the probability and the other. Field work, gather and collect data using surveys, interviews, etc. So whatever form of interviewing, focus group, whatever it is, however you want to go about the field work and gather and collect data, it's really up to the entrepreneur. Important to minimize errors, so select the right respondents. Obviously, that's key. We don't want to just be surveying anybody or interviewing anybody because we have a certain target market and a certain type of an individual we're looking for. So select the right respondents. Correctly record observations. Obviously, you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to be daydreaming or not writing down whatever questions that you're asking them. You want to make sure you're writing down the responses and really take notes well and be in tune with what's going on. Conduct data analysis. So frequency analysis to identify patterns in the data. So how often is one of these phenomenons occurring? Most widely used is a cross tabulation. We'll get into that. We'll get into what a cross tabulation is. We've got a little video. It's like a 3-minute video from YouTube explaining what a cross tabulation is. So we'll show that video on Friday as well, so we can get an idea of what a cross tabulation is. Research conclusions and taking action. So the most critical aspect of your marketing research is to interpret the information and make conclusions. Obviously, like we said before, what good is all this data? What good is knowing all these different people and getting their results and spending all this time interviewing them and everything if we can't get the data and actually decipher it and be able to infer what that data is telling us and be able to put it to good use or be able to know if we need more data or just whatever it might be. So obviously, having something and being able to actually put it to use are two different things. So that's why it's so critical to get good data and spend the time in this process to get good data and to really get the right people. So that way you can actually put it to use. Do not allow your ego to get in the way. So a lot of times, potential entrepreneurs might think that they've got the best idea. They know it is because it's something they really, really like, and they just know that maybe they got like a really strong ego and strong-headed, bullheaded, and they're going to say, no, no matter what, I'm going to bring this to industry, to bring it to market because I know it's going to be a success. Well, if you have that thought and then you go about doing your surveys and your interviews and then the respondents, whatever they responded back to you, seems as if it's not going to really be that valuable or be that great of a venture, chances are it's not going to be. So you need to just swallow your pride and your ego and maybe just completely shut it down and start a new venture and a new idea, or maybe just tweak it and alter it and go another direction with it, and it just to design it differently than what you thought. So don't allow your ego to get in the way. Um, let the research speak for itself. So obviously, don't try to skew the results. If the results are what the results are. So don't try to skew the results. Let the research speak for itself. Um, that's actually we're out of time right now. So we'll go ahead and finish the last 3 slides on Friday. Also, I just want to go over a few more things. So we have 3 more slides here to finish up the content from chapter 3. Then, like I said, next week, or I'm sorry, Friday, we'll watch that cross tabulation video. It's like 3 minutes. We will play around a little bit with these links right here with the Small Business Administration, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Census Bureau, and Fact Finder, because these are going to be the links, like I said, to help assist us in our research for our project. And we're also on Friday going to be going over one more time the entrepreneurial marketing plan details. That way, no one can say they didn't hear it or understand it. And we're going to be going over the actual marketing plan that is on page 205. We'll be talking a little bit about the different sections that are included in that on Friday. So that's our plans moving forward for Friday. Next week, my plan is to stay within this chapter, and obviously we'll have already covered the content. So that's going to give people some time to work on some things. We'll see how we finish up on Class Friday to determine how next week's going to totally shape out. But hopefully next week we're going to have some good time to be able to work on that entrepreneurial exercise that's going to be due next week, or the portion of that marketing plan project that's going to be due into next week. So we're in a good point right now with this course, with content being covered. So with that being said, that's it almost for chapter 3. We have 3 more slides, and then we're going to really start getting into the details of this marketing plan more on Friday. So I hope everyone has a good day. Thank you for your time, and I will see everyone on Friday.